Discover 3 sinister true horror stories of Stalker-Exes that will haunt you forever. Jessica had always thought of Oakwood Pines as her sanctuary. The sun-drenched streets, murmurs of laughter, and the smell of grilling burgers wafting through the summer air made it feel safe, a world apart from the chaos she fled. But that illusion shattered one bleak morning when the dread crept into her gut. An odd text flickered on her old flip phone, a shadowy photo of her front porch, taken while they slept. Her heart raced. Just a prank, she told herself, probably local teens. She dismissed it, but a nagging unease settled in. As the days went by, the messages escalated. Nice flowers on your porch, Jess. Ethan loves the swings. Each word twisted inside her like a knife. Familiar details painted a picture only an observer would know. Panic gripped her. The mornings turned into a blur of coffee and anxiety as she juggled her night shifts at the diner with tending to her 6-year-old son, Ethan. But even his laughter couldn't lift the growing veil of fear. Things grew darker. While they played outside, Ethan innocently pointed toward an empty yard. "Mommy, that friendly man watches us." A chill went down Jessica's spine. Thoughts raced through her head. Was Kyle back? Her ex, once a bright light turned dark, lingered in her mind, his unsettling charm buried under layers of past heartbreak. Just last week he'd shown up, bearing flowers and captivating smiles that felt like ice. She forced herself to remember why she'd walked away, the anger, the lies. Jessica tried talking to neighbors about her fears. They smiled politely, but skepticism rolled off them like the summer heat. "You're just being a worried mom, Jess," Karen had said, shaking her head. "You're probably just stressed or overtired." Doubt whispered into her brain, twisting the knife deeper. Was she really losing her grip on reality? The nights grew heavier. Each creak in the house echoed louder. Was it the wind, or something more sinister? Jessica gathered the last remnants of courage and clutched Ethan tighter on the couch, trying to shield him from the shadows looming outside. She had to keep him safe. Then, after a long silence, a loud bang jolted them both upright. The front door had rattled, sending shockwaves of panic through Jessica's veins. Her heart pounded as she froze. Who was knocking? Kyle? The watchful man? Or something awful waiting to seep inside? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jessica hesitated, gripping the doorknob with shaking hands. Every inch of her screamed to keep her son safe, to barricade the door behind her, yet curiosity pulled at her. What was waiting on the other side? Each tick of the clock felt like a countdown. Her breaths quickened, and doubt clouded her mind. What if opening this door unleashed a terror she couldn't contain? What if the true horror had already seeped into her life, masked behind the familiar faces next door? As she finally turned the knob, the chilling thought struck her hard. What if the real nightmare started here, beneath the calm surface of Oakwood Pines? The door creaked open, revealing a night draped in shadows. Jessica squinted through the dim light, expecting to spot a figure lurking just beyond the threshold. Her mind danced with images of Kyle's face, that twisted smile. But there was nothing, just the emptiness of her front porch, the stillness dappling the night air like a deep breath held too long. "Mommy?" Ethan's soft voice broke her reverie, pulling her back to the safety of the moment. She turned to him, pale and confused. "Shoo, it's okay, baby. Stay inside," she whispered, backing away from the door, ready to close it tight. The banging had stopped, but the dread clawed at her. Something wasn't right. Suddenly, a rustling sound echoed from the bushes. Jessica's heart dropped. Her instincts screamed for her to slam the door shut. Before she could react, a figure emerged, a long silhouette with familiar features now distorted in the shadows. "Jess? Open up. It's me." Kyle's voice slithered through the air, ripe with feigned warmth. Panic surged anew. She hadn't spoken to him in weeks, had avoided him like the plague, yet here he was, as if summoned from her darkest dreams. "Go away, Kyle," she hissed, voice trembling as she sidled Ethan behind her. "I don't want to see you. Come on, baby, let us talk." "Just for a minute," he pressed, his words oozing familiarity and poison. "I promise it's important." An icy sweat trickled down her spine. She could hear the pleading in his voice, but it was wrapped tightly in malice. He had shown her who he truly was more than once before, and she had gripped onto her resolve to never let him in again. "I've called the cops," she lied, hoping to bolster her wavering courage. There was silence. Then laughter, dark and hollow. "That's cute, Jess. But we both know it'll take them a while to come. What are we going to do until then?" The way he spoke made her skin crawl, as if he were savoring her fear like fine wine. She slammed the door shut, locking it with trembling hands, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the oppressive silence. "Mommy? Is he the friendly man?" Ethan asked, clutching her pant leg, eyes wide and terrified. "No honey, he's not friendly at all." Her mind raced. She grabbed her phone and called 911, her fingers shaking as they darted across the screen. The line was busy, tones ringing in her ear. She tried again, but the same monotonous whir echoed back. Panic morphed into dread. The thumping returned, this time louder, more frantic. The sound reverberated like a war drum against the door. "Jess! Let me in. I just want to help." His voice turned sweet, a mockery of their once happy days. All the memories of laughter, sanity, and promises unraveled in that moment. What if this was her last stand against the darkness he represented? Ethan whimpered beside her, tears streaming down his face. "Mommy, why is he doing this?" "Stay close," she whispered, lifting him off the ground. "We have to hide." They dashed for the kitchen, the pounding growing louder, but Jessica's mind spun. There was nowhere safe. Not here, and not with the man she once loved seeking to break her down. The walls felt like they were closing in, then it hit her. Kyle had never been a stranger, he was part of the very foundation of her past. "How did he find me?" she thought, her heart racing, fingers trembling against Ethan's cheek as she tried to soothe him. Did he follow her here, waiting for the right moment to strike? Or was someone else involved? As the door shook violently, Jessica's breath hitched. What if the true danger was someone closer than she had ever considered? The banging stopped abruptly. A silence filled the space, hollow and suffocating. Jessica peered cautiously around the corner. "Mommy?" Ethan whispered. Sure, but silence was deceiving, and in that stillness, buried realities loomed. What awaited her outside the kitchen door? Then, she heard the faintest whisper, a voice, barely audible but unmistakably near. Jessica, her pulse quickened. She didn't want to turn, afraid of what she might see or who might be watching, and just behind her, shadows shifted, but she couldn't see. What was lurking just beyond her sight, waiting for the dark to swallow her whole? The truth hid in the black, and it was time for her to finally confront it. Jessica's breath came in shallow bursts as she struggled to steady her racing heart. The hushed whisper floated through the kitchen, wrapping around her like a fog. Panic crested in her throat. Was it Kyle? Or something else? "Mommy." Ethan's voice broke the spell of silence, echoing her dread. His small body trembled in her arms. She glanced around the dim room, frantic. No way to hide, not when the threat seemed to seep through the cracks of their sanctuary. She crouched low, forcing herself to breathe in and out, steadying her nerves. "We need to go to the basement. It'll be easier to hide, she whispered, her mind racing. The house had a stubborn old basement, dark and chilling, but it was far from a comfort zone. Can't we just stay here? Ethan pleaded, wide eyes shimmering with fear. No. We have to move. She hesitated only a moment. Somewhere deep inside, a flicker of hope ignited. She needed to protect her son at all costs. Though it felt like a gamble against fate, it would take her off this floor, away from the pounding, twisted man outside. With her heart pounding, she glanced once more at the door. The silence pressed in thick around them. She felt a sudden urge to bolt from the room, to escape into the unseen. But as she took a step, something shifted behind her, a movement just beyond the reach of light. The whisper danced again, closer this time. Jessica, her resolve shattered like glass around her. Without thinking, she grabbed Ethan, darting past the kitchen table cluttered with memories, the scent of old meals, the shadows of worries tangled in the air. She turned for the basement door, heart hammering against her ribs like a frantic prisoner. Ethan followed, his tiny feet slapping against the floor, both of them gasping with every hurried step. She fumbled the handle, twisting it violently, but it stuck. Her nails scraped against the wood, an agonizing echo of desperation. "Mommy, I'm scared," Ethan whispered, tears sparkling in his eyes. "I know, sweetie," she murmured, the door refusing to budge. "Just a second, I promise." Desperation clawed at her throat as she banged the heel of her palm against the door. "Open, damn it." A chilling realization washed over her. Were they truly safe anywhere? Fear spiraled, threatening to engulf her. And then, she heard it, a latch click. The door swung inward with a groan, revealing darkness thicker than velvet. A grave silence beckoned them, pooling secrets beneath its surface. "Go." She pushed Ethan ahead of her, heart racing as she stepped into the gloom. She flicked on her phone's light, the weak beam quivering to life, illuminating crumbling walls. Dust motes floated in the air like trapped souls, and an instant chill sank into her bones. The basement was a labyrinth of forgotten belongings, old boxes stacked like tombs, reminders of lives before her. Shadows lurked in the corners, hunched shapes just waiting for a moment of weakness. "Mommy?" Ethan's wobbly voice trembled as he peered into the darkness. The light flickered, as if protesting against the insecurities of their situation. "Stay close." She grasped his hand tightly. The weak beam flickered, and Jessica's heart raced. Something shifted in the corner of the room, barely visible. Without warning, came the familiar laughter, cold and mocking, echoing through the confined space. "Thought you could hide from me?" Jessica's pulse spiked, panic clawing deeper. It was him. How had he found them? The darkness felt like a living entity, thick with defenses breaking down. She scanned their surroundings, frantically searching for an escape, a weapon, anything. "Mommy, I don't want him here." Another laugh, a low, sinister thing that seeped into the very air around her. She squeezed Ethan's hand tighter, grounding him as she moved backward, almost instinctively. Behind her, the boxes appeared to shift, as if they were closing in. The laughter morphed into a growl, dangerously close. "Jessica, you know better than to run from me." The shadows thickened, twisting around her in a suffocating grip. What happened next felt like a fractured lifetime. As she opened her mouth to scream, the light flickered and died, plunging them into utter darkness. Then she understood. What if Kyle wasn't the only danger lurking in the dark? Every breath slipped away as a new terror crept into her mind. The fight for their survival had just begun, and the stakes were higher than ever. But she couldn't give up. Not now. A voice from the shadows murmured, "You'll never escape, Jessica." What lay hidden in the darkness? And who else wanted to claim her as their own? The darkness pressed in on all sides, suffocating and thick. Jessica felt every pulse of fear shudder through her body like a violent wave. She squeezed Ethan's hand, wishing she could draw strength from his small frame, but all she found was a shared tremor. "Mommy?" he whispered, the fragile tremor in his voice a sharp reminder of their peril. Her mind raced, partly paralyzed by dread, battling against the rising fear that slithered around them. Footsteps echoed, heavy and unnerving, reverberating off the walls of their sanctuary. She couldn't see, but she could feel him, his presence saturated the air like a vile perfume. Jessica pulled Ethan closer, wishing there was a way to dissolve into the shadows, to simply disappear. I want to let him take us, she breathed, attempting to sound more confident than she felt. In the darkness, a low chuckle hummed through the air, chilling her to the core. You have no idea how close I am, Jessica. All of your hiding is for nothing. Her heart raced as adrenaline surged through her. We have to find another way out, she muttered almost to herself, scanning the shadows with her phone's flickering light. The beam danced erratically, revealing grotesque shapes that loomed like forgotten nightmares. Suddenly, from behind a towering stack of boxes, a figure emerged, shrouded in the dim glow. It was a silhouette, tall and unyielding. Jessica's breath hitched. Was it Kyle? Or something far worse? Look what I found, the figure taunted. The voice twisted around her like serpents, coiling tighter with every syllable. You really thought you could escape? Mommy! Ethan cried, his voice splitting the air like glass shattering. She turned, trying to shield him with her body, but there was nowhere to hide. Panic surged through her. Get back! She hissed, pressing against a wall of boxes as if it could protect them. But as she pressed against the ancient wood, the boxes trembled, shifting ominously. Dust rained down like an unwelcome ghost from the rafters. The growing darkness felt alive, a sinister entity engulfing them. The figure moved closer, and for a brief moment, the phone's light caught a glint. A blade flashed, catching Jessica off guard. Anger surged, fueled by fear and desperation. Stay behind me! She shouted, adrenaline firing through her veins, sending her into action. Before she could even think, she lunged to the side, causing a nearby box to topple. The sudden movement created a domino effect, sending a cascade of old photographs and dusty toys crashing down. Stop! The figure yelled. It brought back memories, moments of laughter now twisted into something malicious. The shadows behind the figure began to move as if they were aroused by the chaos, hungry for fear. The laughter returned, echoing louder, drowning out her sanity. You can't escape your past, Jessica. It's here to stay. In a surge of instinct, she turned to Ethan. Look for something. A way out. Anything. Ethan's small hand fumbled against the wall, fingers feeling for anything solid. Jessica could only focus on the encroaching figure, the laugh twisting her insides into knots. The basement felt like a tomb, sealing them inside. Would they find a way out? Did hope remain smothered below the weight of despair? Her heart raced, each beat a reminder of the urgency. And then came a sudden crack, a sound from the far corner of the basement, something breaking. Jessica froze, her breath caught in her throat. The flickering light revealed a jagged piece of glass strewn on the floor. Did it afford them a means for defense? Uncertainty coiled tight in her chest. Ethan, look! But before she could guide her son, the figure lunged, a rush of darkness manifesting in a horrifying shape, desperate to close the final distance. Jessica's heart lodged in her throat as realization struck. Would their fight end here, in the suffocating grasp of this night? What will happen next? The shadows whispered, a cruel reminder of all she had to lose. She thought of their impending despair, but the sheer terror of their situation urged her forward. The light flickered once more. Was there a chance left to survive this nightmare? The question hung in the air, igniting the dread that gripped her. What lay waiting for them just beyond the unseen edges of the darkness? The figure lunged toward them, its outline growing closer as chills seeped into Jessica's spine. She could see the glimmer of the blade, now deadly, hungry. Time slowed, and her instincts screamed for her to act, but her body felt weighed down by the blackness surrounding them. "Mommy!" Ethan's voice shattered the silence, a plea that tore at her heart. The echo bounced off the walls, chased away the calm, and rekindled the throbbing dread nestled deep within her. With no time to think, she grabbed Ethan's wrist, yanking him towards the shattered glass. "Stay close to me," she barked, her voice trembling but laced with determination. She kicked at the glass shard, sending it skittering toward the figure, but it didn't deter its advance. It only laughed, low and gravelly, the sound curling around the room like smoke. "Such a brave mother, trying to protect her son," the figure taunted, eyes glinting with malice. "But bravery, it only makes the ending so much more delicious." They were trapped, cornered like animals. Jessica's heart drummed in her ears, drowning out reason and filling her with a hot rush of despair. She tightened her grip on Ethan and took a step back, urging him to follow her lead. The box she pressed against gave way beneath her fingers, threatening to topple again. Moments of her past flashed before her, horrifying memories of laughter twisted into despair. He was right, they were ensnared in their history. Now, the figure sneered, relishing in her vulnerability. "No need to be scared. I'll take good care of you both once I have what I want." With a primal scream, she lunged forward, desperation fueling her movements as she grabbed the glass shard she'd glanced earlier. It felt cold and reassuring in her grip. She bit back the rising tide of panic that threatened to drown her. "Get back!" she screamed, her hands swung wildly, aiming the glass towards the intruder. It caught a glint of light and sliced through the thick air, but he evaded her strike by a mere inch, laughing heartily. The sound twisted through the narrow confines, driving nails of ice deeper into her bones. As the figure chuckled, something shifted in the shadows behind it. Was it just her imagination, or was the darkness itself moving? Jessica's stomach clenched. "Ethan, we need to get to the stairs. Now!" she urged, still retreating, eyes locked on the figure, but just as she turned, a horrible realization hit her: the stairs were blocked by a tumble of debris. Another pulse of laughter erupted from the figure. "You are so resourceful, Jessica. But it won't save you." Ethan's small frame shook with fear beside her. Shadows twisted around them like writhing serpents, and the air thickened with dread. Jessica needed a distraction, something to buy them time. "Ethan," she whispered, urgency pushing her voice to crack. "When I say go, I need you to run. Find the beams of light, okay? I don't want to leave you, Mommy." He whimpered, his eyes wide and glistening. "I won't let them take us, I promise," she assured him, though each word felt like it could disintegrate into vapor. The figure stepped forward, growing bolder, the blade hairpin sharp, a glint of daylight catching it from heaven knows where. The darkness seemed to rise, swirling like fog, taunting her with its claustrophobic embrace, and then, with a sudden burst of fury, she threw the glass shard. It flew, spinning like a dying star, and for a moment, she dared to hope. But alas, it wasn't aimed well, crashing instead into the wall near the figure, shattering the lingering silence, sending shards dancing off in all directions. "Is that all you've got?" The figure spat, anger flaring. "Now, Ethan. Run!" she shouted, kicking the box away from the stairs. They had only seconds to escape the clutches of the horror closing in around them. She pushed him toward the only source of potential salvation. But as Ethan stumbled forward, a bone-chilling scream erupted from behind them. The figure had darted, faster than she expected, reaching for them with a ferocity that sent shivers racing up her spine. Jessica's breath caught in her throat as she prepared to face the darkness, uncertainty clawing at her mind. Could they both get out? Or was all hope trapped beneath layers of terror? As the shadow drew nearer, she could feel it reaching out, a desperate energy flowing from the unknown. Would she face the engraving presence of the past once more, or would she find the strength to cut through the dark? Time hung suspended in the air as she turned to see what would happen next. The figure lunged again, its silhouette shifting, an amalgamation of darkness and menace. Jessica's heart raced. She grabbed Ethan, pulling him toward the nearest corner of the room, a feeble shield against the impending doom. "Go! Keep moving," she urged, but her words felt hollow in the thickening air. The fear in Ethan's eyes mirrored her own, a small candle flickering against the raging storm. Meanwhile, the figure breathed heavily, a chilling sound that reverberated off the cracked walls. "You think you can hide?" it growled, the blade glistening ominously as it moved with a predatory grace. "I know these shadows better than you do." Jessica clenched Ethan's hand tighter, nearly cutting into his soft skin. They were trapped, swallowed by past regrets and present horrors. The room felt suffocating, the air thick with despair. She glanced around, frantically searching for anything that could help, then she saw a jagged piece of the shattered mirror lying against the wall, shining like a fallen star amid the darkness. "Ethan, listen to me," she whispered, her voice low. "If I can distract him, you have to run for that door. You understand?" "But, Mommy," he cried, his small voice trembling. "Remember the light. Just run." She hated to cause him pain, but there was no time for softness. In a heartbeat, she sprinted toward the mirror fragment, feeling the force of the figure's gaze burning into her back. With a swift motion, she scooped it up, gripping it tightly. The cold cutting edge fueled her resolve. "Hey!" she shouted, her voice rising above the laughter that seeped from the shadow. "Over here." The figure paused, its cruel smile faltering. She felt the momentary hesitation ripple through the air, a crack in its confident facade. Jessica seized the chance. "Come get me." With a sudden growl, it lunged, a blur of dark despair. Jessica swung the mirror shard wildly, catching it off guard. The glass met flesh. A surprised yelp broke from its lips, followed by a hiss of fury. "Now, Ethan. Go!" Jessica screamed as she turned to push him towards the door, but another hideous scream shattered the air. The figure had recovered too quickly, angrier, its slashing knife poised to strike. "Foolish woman!" it spat. Jessica's breath felt like flames in her chest. Ethan's tiny feet stumbled toward the door, but he stopped, fear wrapping around him. He cast a glance back at her, uncertainty written all over his face. "Ethan, keep moving." Her heart pounded as adrenaline coursed through her veins. She shifted her stance, feeling the burning presence of danger close in again. The space around her seemed to shrink, the walls closing in, the shadows pooling at the feet of the malevolent figure, thick and pulsating like a living thing. It stepped closer, the blade glinting seductively in the dim light. "I'm going to enjoy this," she screamed in fury and desperation, the sound echoing like thunder as she charged at it. The shard of glass felt warm in her palm, a fragile promise of survival. She swung it, desperation turning her movement into a blur of action and fear, but just as she struck out, a violent jolt erupted from the floor, knocking her off balance. Her breath hitched as Jessica stumbled, the glass slipping from her grip. "Mommy!" Ethan cried out, voice cracking. Jessica's heart dropped. She turned just in time to see the figure's arm reach toward her son. The shadows surged around them, as if consuming the very light left in the room. Panic swelled in her chest. "Ethan, find the light. Find somewhere safe." But would the darkness allow him to escape? A piercing scream erupted from the figure, shattered glass mixed with the sounds of chaos. Jessica's mind raced. Where was the door? Was it still open? Could they both make it? As the shadows tightened, she felt the air thicken with dread. Time was running out. The walls seemed to pulse, and with each heartbeat, the figure grew closer and more powerful. Fear clenched at her throat, and just as the figure lunged again, everything went dark, swallowing her in an abyss of terrifying uncertainty. Where were they now? Would she find a way back to Ethan before it was too late? In that moment, she realized she was not just fighting for her life, she was fighting against a horror that had stretched across the years. And suddenly, the shadows whispered secrets that should have remained buried. Jessica felt lost in a void. Darkness surrounded her, thick and smothering, stealing her breath. For a heartbeat, she hung suspended in an eerie silence, the familiar sounds of Ethan's cries swallowed whole by the encompassing blackness. She couldn't move. Panic seized her heart, tightening like a vice, then came the whispers fractured and chilling. They coiled around her, carried secrets of past wrongs, lost hopes, and haunting memories. Each word twisted like a knife in her mind, dredging up the demons she had tried to forget. "It's your fault, you should have protected him," they taunted, echoing from the depths of her own conscience. Ethan. The name clawed its way from her throat, desperation fueling a surge of strength. She pushed against the darkness, willing her body to move. As if answering her summon, a sliver of light pierced through the shadows, illuminating a narrow path. Jessica stumbled forward, driven by fear and maternal instinct. She could hear Ethan's voice now, faint but clear, cutting through the silence. "Mommy. Please. Ethan." The light wavered, but it guided her, moving just out of reach. With every step, the malevolent figure loomed in her mind, a relentless nightmare. "You can't save him," it seemed to whisper, each syllable drenching her in ice. "This time, you're too late." Jessica refused to falter, pushing forward even as her legs threatened to buckle. The shadows clung to her like a shroud, whispering their malevolence. Suddenly, she emerged from the thick gloom into a small room, dimly lit by flickering flames from old lanterns. The walls were lined with portraits, faces frozen in expressions of anger and despair. Each gaze seemed to follow her, filled with judgment. "Ethan!" She shouted again, her fear igniting her voice with raw desperation. Across the room, a shadow shifted, causing her heart to stutter. It was him, she was sure of it. But he was trapped, standing in front of an old wardrobe, too terrified to move. The figure reappeared, stepping out from the shadows like a specter. A wicked grin spread across its face as it leaned closer to Ethan. "No more games, time to play for keeps. Get away from him." Jessica screamed, the words tearing from her throat. She lunged forward, fueled by sheer fury even as dread clawed at her insides. The figure turned, its features twisting in a grotesque display of amusement. "You think you can stop me? You're just a flicker against the dark." With a desperate gasp, she reached for a nearby lantern, its flame flickering weakly. The light felt warm in her hands, a fragile spark in the surrounding despair. "I'll show you darkness." With every ounce of strength, she hurled the lantern toward the figure, her heart pounding as the glass shattered. Flames erupted, illuminating the room in a flash of searing light. The figure howled, the sound mingling with Jessica's wild heartbeat. For a moment, the shadows receded, and Jessica saw Ethan's terrified face distorted by the glow. "Run!" she screamed. "Run, Ethan!" He darted toward her, eyes wide but resolute. In that instant of clarity, she saw her son's fear and determination intermingling, a reflection of her own. But just as he reached her, the darkness roared back, swelling like an angry tide. The flames flickered, desperately fighting back the shadows, but they surged uncontrollably, wrapping around them like a living beast. Jessica felt the heat, but the cold terror of the entity reigned supreme. "Mommy!" Ethan's voice sliced through her mind. "No. The sheer force of her will propel her forward. We'll make it. We have to." Panic erupted in the confines of her mind. She pulled Ethan close, but the shadows twisted around them, mirroring her growing fear. Then, the whispers sharpened, flooding her with self-doubt, memories of failure, and loss. "He's more mine than yours. You can't keep him safe." The truth twisted like a knife deep in her gut. For a fleeting second, Jessica hesitated, the shadows seeping into her thoughts. Would she lose him? What if she was meant to fail? No. I won't let you take him. With renewed determination, she broke free momentarily, attempting to create distance. Light and darkness clashed violently, the flames illuminating shapes of anguished faces surrounding them, all crying for release. She had to find a way out, not just for her son, but for herself. Trust me, Ethan. But suddenly, the ground trembled, splitting between them and sending Ethan tumbling backward. Horror unfurled in her chest. Ethan. Would the shadows swallow him too? Despair wrapped its clutches around her heart as she reached out. But just as she heard his feeble cry, darkness enveloped her once again, a terrifying abyss pulling her deeper. In that moment, Jessica gasped, suddenly realizing the whispers were rising to a crescendo. They had a plan. What horrors would they unleash next? Would she have the strength to fight back, to reclaim her son from the teeth of despair? As the shadows pulled her under, the chilling truth sank in: there was more at stake than mere survival, and the secrets of the past were about to unleash their full fury. The darkness pressed in, a suffocating mass that twisted and turned, overcoming Jessica with its unyielding grip. She felt the weight of her failures, a tsunami of guilt crashing over her. Ethan. She breathed out, the name almost lost in the chaos. Her heart raced, pounding against her chest like a trapped bird. A flicker of light shone again, breaking the oppressive void. It was dim and uncertain, but it promised hope. Gathering every ounce of strength, Jessica pushed herself forward, fighting against the swirling black. Mommy! The distant cry of her son sent jolts of adrenaline coursing through her veins. She dashed toward the light, dodging tendrils of darkness as they lunged for her. They hissed, taunting her, and she could hear that familiar voice sneering, "You won't escape, you're already lost." With every frantic step, the whispers grew louder, more insistent, clawing at the edges of her sanity. Jessica gritted her teeth, battling against despair. No. I refuse to be a victim. Her voice teetered on the edge of a scream, echoing in the shadows. Bursting through the half-closed door ahead, she plunged into what felt like a vast, empty expanse. The light grew stronger, radiant and blinding, casting eerie shadows that danced over walls stained with memories. Family photos adorned the space, each capturing moments of joy and innocence, a stark contrast to the anguish that hung in the air. Ethan! She cried again, heart full of hope and desperation. Suddenly, the floor beneath her shifted. Planks creaked and groaned, revealing a dark, gaping chasm. Jessica stumbled back just in time, staring in horror as the ground twisted like a living, breathing entity. A low rumble filled the air, resonating deep within her chest. But Ethan's voice broke through, strained yet unmistakable, "Mommy, help." She blinked against the brightness, her vision clearing just long enough to see movement at the edge of the abyss. A shadowy figure loomed next to her son, gripping him tight. Panic swelled inside her. "Let him go. Mommy." The sound of his fear shattered her heart. "Get away from him." The words came out as a whisper, thin and trembling. The figure turned with a rasp, revealing glowing eyes that looked straight through her. "You think you're strong enough? You'll only lead him to despair, just like you did before." Jessica's breath caught in her throat. "I don't care," she shouted defiantly. "I'll fight for him. I won't let you take him." The air thickened with tension, and suddenly, the earth beneath her shifted again. From deep within the chasm, voices echoed, bitter, twisted, full of rage and sorrow. "You've ignored the truth. Come join us." The floor split open wider, darkness crawling up her legs, cold and clammy. She felt the entity's whispers wrap around her throat, squeezing tighter. Memories of choices gone wrong, failures, and regrets rushed back like a flood. For a moment, despair clawed its way into her heart, dragging her down. "Mommy." Ethan's plea pierced through the darkness. "Hold on to me," Jessica shouted, reaching out. She fought against the pull of the shadows, every fiber of her being urging her to stay connected to her son. The gap widened, sucking in the light. With trembling hands, she grabbed onto a nearby coat rack, the only thing keeping her grounded. "Ethan, I'm coming." She felt the sharp pain of splintered wood digging into her palm, the risk it brought fueling her drive. Then everything shifted again, a burst of dark laughter echoing from the depths. "You're too weak. You think love is enough?" But just as the abyss threatened to claim her, a flicker of light flared up from the depths, warm against the cold. It pulsed like a heartbeat, illuminating the shadows that grasped for her soul. "Mom! I can't hold on." Ethan's voice strained against the chaos. "No!" She screamed into the darkness. "I want to lose you." With renewed strength, she yanked herself closer to the edge. But in that moment, the light began to fade, the whispers crescendoed into a tangled web of chaos. What came next would decide everything. Would she sink into the darkness, or could she pull her son back from the brink? The final thread stretched thin as shadows clawed and lunged. What awaited them in the abyss could either mend their broken bond or sever it forever. Jessica held on to that glimmer of hope, desperate and uncertain, but could she truly fight the darkness that gnawed at her soul? Jessica's heart pounded louder as the abyss yawned open beneath her. The shadows reached hungrily, their cold tendrils biting into her skin, pulling her down toward the unknown. "Ethan!" She roared again, but her voice felt small, swallowed by the cacophony of dark laughter. Each echo from the void seemed to mock her, a twisted symphony of despair that threatened to shatter the last of her hope. "Mommy! I can't hold on!" Ethan wailed, his little hands desperately grasping at the figure beside him. Jessica's gut twisted. The figure tightened its grip, darkness swirling around them both like a sinister fog. "No! Let him go!" Jessica's scream tore through the air, raw and twisted with rage and fear. Adrenaline rushed through her veins, a burning urge to carve a path through the chaos and save her son. The abyss hissed in response, almost as if amused by her defiance. "Mom, please!" Ethan cried out again, voice cracking with terror. With every ounce of her being, Jessica clung to the coat rack, the rough wood digging deep into her palms, as if her pain might tether her to the light. She felt the shadows pulling at her, whispering insidious secrets. "You abandoned him, Jessica. You failed, you always will." Those words coiled around her, heavy like chains, fighting against the oppressive weight of that despair. Jessica shook her head, forcing herself to breathe. "I want to listen to you." She shouted at the darkness, as if her voice could sever its grip. "I am not my past. I am more than my failures." The darkness recoiled for a moment, slithering back, as if her words had stung. In that brief silence, she glimpsed a flicker of light again, brighter this time. "Stay with me, Ethan." She reached deeper, launching forward, determined to bridge that deadly gap. The figure near Ethan shifted. Its glowing eyes narrowed, revealing momentary vulnerability but quickly morphing back to malice. "Come on, join us. There's no escaping what you are." It hissed, and with that, the ground trembled violently. A tremor rolled through the chasm, and Jessica felt her footing shift. The coat rack splintered as she pulled, sending splinters flying into the air like shattered glass. She gasped, her fingers slipping, yet somehow, that flickering light pulsed brighter, igniting her spirit. In that instant, she caught Ethan's face, fearful, desperate, but also trusting. A surge of fierceness ignited within her. I'll save you," she whispered with a resolve as sharp as glass. With a last burst of energy, she lunged toward the edge, arms outstretched, desperate to pull him back from the brink. The shadows shrieked, furious and frantic, curling ferociously around her like hunting vipers. She thrust her hand forward, feeling a moment of connection, a spark of warmth, almost like a heartbeat. Together. But just as her fingertips brushed Ethan's, the chasm let out a primal roar. The ground cracked open wider, swallowing the light whole. Jessica's heart sank as the radiant glow began to dim again. "No!" she shouted, her voice lost in the growing chaos. The entity surrounding Ethan's form twisted, changing shapes like smoke, revealing glimpses of faces familiar yet alien, filled with sorrow and despair. They reached out, pleading. "Join us, Jessica. Let go of your pain." Jessica shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I want to become one of you," she screamed, and with a final push, her arms wrapped around Ethan, pulling with every ounce of strength she had left. But the shadows fought back hard, the darkness roiling like a living monster. Desperation wrapped around her throat as she pulled and pulled, feeling Ethan slipping away. In that moment, as the abyss gaped, a fleeting thought passed her mind, the paradox that love could be a gateway to salvation or damnation. As they hung on the edge, Jessica knew everything she had ever done, every choice, led to this. The climax surged. Would they be swallowed whole, or could they break free? The darkness screamed, and then everything went black. What happened next? Would despair claim them both, or would hope slip through the cracks? The answer waited just beneath the surface. The silence that followed Jessica's scream felt like a thick blanket, stifling her breath and her heart. Everything hung suspended for just a heartbeat longer, and time seemed to unravel like an old sweater fraying at the seams. But just as dread threatened to wrap around her tightly, a blinding flash ignited the darkness surrounding them. Light. Not just a flicker, a blazing beacon that exploded from the depths of Jessica's heart, driven by love, the love she had for Ethan. It cut through shadows like a knife, illuminating the suffocating void. "Mommy!" Ethan's voice broke through the chaos again, stronger, unwavering. Jessica clung to her resolve like a lifeline, drawing energy from her love, letting it course through her like the fiercest river. "Hold on, baby!" she shouted into the swirling abyss. The shadows writhed, fighting against this sudden surge of light, hissing in fury. The malevolent figure, now grotesquely distorted in the glow, recoiled momentarily, revealing its true horror, uncertainty masked by anger. In that moment, Jessica saw her chance. "You don't control me!" she screamed defiantly, her words fueled by an unwavering determination. She didn't just want to save Ethan, she wanted to reclaim all that darkness had stolen from her: the trust, the sanity, the love. Holding tightly to the coat rack, she yanked herself upward, pulling Ethan along with her, their bond stronger than any shadow could break. Together. And as if the universe willed it, their hands clasped tightly. In that instant of connection, the light intensified, sending shockwaves through the room. The walls shimmered, fading, receding back into a distant past. Laughter and whispers transformed into screams of anger before dissipating completely. They exploded forth into the real world. The sun shone bright above, casting warmth across their skin. Beneath the vast sky of oakwood pines, they collapsed onto grass, breathless but free from the nightmare that had pursued them. The flowers swayed gently, the laughter of children filled the air. Jessica cradled Ethan closely, the relief flooding her entire being. "We did it, honey. We made it. We're safe." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she clutched him in fierce admiration, grateful that they had endured the darkest of nights and survived. As the moments rolled on, they heard sirens approaching. Familiar voices came rushing through the neighborhood, neighbors who had previously dismissed her fears now reacting with concern. "Jessica. Are you okay? Ethan?" Her heart swelled with both gratitude and bitterness. They had been misunderstood, judged, and yet here they were alive and so very free. Together they stood, united against a world that once felt threatening. "We can move forward now," she murmured softly, a vow more to herself than the boy in her arms. "And I'll always protect you, Ethan. Always." Around them, the onlookers gathered, worry-laced with admiration and disbelief. But as they embraced, she realized she didn't need their validation anymore. She had found her strength not in the empty words of others, but in the light of her bravery and love. "Mommy," Ethan whispered, gazing up at her with eyes filled with wonder. Were they really gone? She smiled, brushing the hair from his forehead. Yes, sweetheart. They're gone. It's just us now. As they turned to greet the new day, both Jessica and Ethan felt the weight of what had been lifted away at last. They walked, hand in hand, into the warmth of the sun, leaving shadows behind them, ready to build a future unshackled by fear. This was their new beginning, and Jessica vowed to embrace every moment, proving that love, indeed, holds the greatest power of all. But before they could fully step away from the past and into the future, that familiar figure flickered like a distant memory, a reminder that shadows lurk just outside the light, inviting them to stay vigilant. Yet Jessica now walked with purpose, armed with hope, against whatever would rise again. Now, this is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and help this story reach others who need to see it. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild ending. What do you think? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support means everything.